Good evening, colleagues. Welcome to the meeting of the Executive Cabinet Member Regeneration Portfolio. First item on the agenda is monitoring of Executive Cabinet Member decisions. Any questions, queries in relation to monitoring decisions? Can't see any hands, so we will note the paper and move to the next item on the agenda. Directorate of Plays Finance Report, 24-25 quarter 2. Janet, you're on mute, Janet. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is the quarter 2 finance report for the whole of the Directorate of Place. The Directorate is currently projecting an overspend of £465,000 by the end of the financial year. For this portfolio, the overspend will be £227,000, and that is mainly around planning. The key financial findings can be found on page 3, and the service-specific findings can be found on Appendix 1. The Executive Cabinet Member is asked to note the contents of the report and to approve the recommendations in section 11. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Janet. Any questions? Councillor Warren?
Thank you, Councillor Zaman. It's just regarding the call-off of 400,000. What is it currently, please?
It is the 400,000. We just have it in as a rule of thumb. We're not asking you to do anything
more. It's not
more.
increasing, decreasing, anything like that?
No, it's just that because there's some contracts within the capital programme, that just gives them that permission to go out and let a contract of 400,000. So it's just there, and it's in there every time just to make sure we cover any spend within the capital programme.
Fabulous, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson?
Just in relation to the planning bit, why are we so far out?
I can just give you a high-level overview financially, and then you've got Dwayne on the call, who's the AD for that area. So planning overspent significantly last year and the year before. They were seeing a loss of income and increased agency staff. They developed an action plan last year. And what we're finding now is that action plan is going into play, and then the overspend is coming down. So actually this is much better than it has been in quarter 1 and also for last financial year. I've not projected it any lower because I want to see that level of income coming down and the staffing going, so the income going up, sorry, and the staffing coming down before I project it any lower than that, because I don't want fluctuations throughout the year. So at the moment we're quite comfortable with that figure. Hopefully with the action plan it might get better than that, but I wouldn't like to say that at this point.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Dwayne, then John.
Oh, John, did you want to go first? Did we put our hands up at the same time?
We did. Mine's a more general point, Dwayne, really, and it was just to reassure members that obviously Janet is a member of our directorate leadership team, but there's a sharp focus on the financial performance of the directorate. We have seen a significant positive shift in the overspend reported at quarter 1 relative to quarter 2 to the tune of several £100,000. Equally, I'm not naive enough for quarter 2 to suggest that we can confidently predict the outturn position at this point in time, but it was really just to reassure Councillor Wilkinson and members that we continue, as I say, to have a sharp focus, particularly in relation to areas of overspend. And I think certainly in terms of top lines, Janet, I think your explanation in terms of some of the challenges that the planning service have faced, I think are spot on. I think there is a transformation programme which continues to be in play. And whilst there are many dimensions to that programme, certainly financial performance is one aspect of that. But Dwayne, I don't know whether you wanted to just supplement that quickly, but it was just, as I say, a small point of reassurance from my part to members on the call. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, John. So yeah, so I mean, it's really been said. It's a hugely improving picture, but it is only Q2. We've introduced a lot of change, which is seeing huge benefit. And like Janet and John have both said, the overspend or the predicted overspend, the forecasted overspend is reducing. We've also introduced things like the pre-apps. So there's opportunity, which will make we've got a much better productive client service, but also helps with additional income for the team as well. And having that early engagement will help with some additional income. So there's lots of things happening and still to happen over this financial year. And the target is to aim to a balanced budget for next financial year. Thank you.
Could I just
Yeah.
the reason why I asked these questions, I knew the answer before I asked the question, which is always useful. It is, and I've said this many times over the years, we are local government, and like any government, reports are set in a certain way. But we're all well aware that there is an outside view of local government, the public. And if you're a member of the public and you read a council report and it says minus, blah, 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 blah. Oh, council's useless, blah, blah, losing money, etc., etc. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I sometimes think we should produce reports or have bits in the report which gives an indication that we know what the score is about the action plan, about changing it round in terms of income. But if I was a person who thinks the council is bilge and read that, it feeds that constant cycle. And I have to say this, I think we as a corporate body do not sometimes think about trying to put it in simple language, so somebody who may not be aware of what 50 odd million pounds looks like is what the council is doing. Now, I know that's more difficult than a normal council report, but that's my point of view about it. Sometimes we make a rod for our own back in local government, no matter who's running it, about having a local government report instead of having something which a member of the public can read and see, oh yeah, they're doing this and doing that, because that question, the answer is not really readily available in the reports. It's just a point of view.
Yeah, very helpful. Thanks, David. That's very helpful. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the petition in relation to. Before I move on to the next item agenda, next item on the agenda, I approve the report and recommendations as set out in the finance report 24-25 Q2. Thank you. Yeah. So moving on, item 3 on the agenda is petition in relation to Freedom Fibre, Breeze Hill Estate. Who's doing this? Is it Dwayne yourself?
Yeah. Do you mind if I just introduce and then Alex will take colleagues and councillors through the report? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine. Go ahead.
So thank you, Chair. So just as a really brief introduction to the report, I just wanted to apologise for the length of time this has taken. You'll see from the dates that the petition was submitted to the council some time ago. Unfortunately, it did get lost in all the changes around planning that were happening around that time when the petition landed. As soon as we've noticed and found it within the system, we've pushed it through the forward plan. But it was really just to offer my apologies at that time. And Alex will take you through the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. Alex?
Thanks, Dwayne, Councillor. Yeah, thank you. Obviously, members have got a copy of the report in front of them with the appendices. Obviously, it followed the submission of a relatively large petition from some residents on the Breeze Hill Estate in Overholton against Freedom Fibre's installation of wooden poles within that estate, raising concerns over obviously existing infrastructure and broadband being sufficient, no proper consultation or didn't follow the democratic process. Members will note that across the borough, not just in the Overholton estate, obviously the be regularly popping up poles, wooden poles, metal poles for between about 8 and 10 meters in height, providing fixed wired broadband. Obviously, members will appreciate that there's the legislative background. Central government have put powers in place to give broadband providers and operators permitted development rights through the planning regime. There is a requirement to consult local councils, so that's highways and planning for 28 days through a Regulation 5 notice. And also there is a requirement in the guidance to consult with residents as well. So members will note that the poles that have gone up are permitted development, don't require the benefit of planning permission. So members are advised to note the petition and also note the legislative framework that the operators and the councils operate within. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Thanks, Chair. I just kind of want to put on record a little bit, really, because any councillor who has had these poles, the streets dug up in their area, just know how upset residents have been about it, and also how tied our hands are regarding it. And there were demonstrations in the Town Hall Square, there were councillors shouting on the Town Hall steps, there were members of the public as well. I do think that the information when they first started going in was so slow to come out in terms of what was permitted development, and there was all the confusion whether it was highways or whether it was the planning team, and I think the council's been slow. I think we as councillors as well have grappled with the legislation changes as well that have come out, and it has been quite unforgiving from residents, I think, just because I know that the amount of abuse I've received personally has been pretty horrific about it. But I do really understand the feeling of members of the public as well. But I do think it's kind of, the legislation changed and the companies and businesses were so quick to move that local authorities were just so far behind the curve, because they got legislation approved and they were out with polls like that week. That's how it seemed. So it's not really a criticism of anything, really. It's just, as a process, it's just been really painful for everybody involved. I think officers, the council, residents as well, and it's just been really painful. But it is that our hands are tied with it, and it is quite sad as well. But thank you.
Absolutely, you're correct, Councillor Warren, and it is a big challenge for us going forward. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Adele said. I mean, we in West Orton now have the pleasure, in inverted commas, because obviously it's been recorded, this meeting, of these companies moving into West Orton. We've had for the last few months BT sticking masts up left, right and centre in relation to Openreach. I mean, you're right, Adele, that when, suddenly it appears, and one morning I opened my curtains, looked out and I thought, yeah, there's a mast there, which literally had not been there the day before, and it's right at the end of my garden. So yeah, people, they do appear. I think there are some things which residents are learning, particularly in West Orton. We've had one estate which would have had 12 masts on it. Never had a mast since it was built in the mid-70s. It's all been underground, and BT earlier this year did even further extensions of the underground system. And in our case, we had BRSK, who suddenly said, "Oh, we're going to put 12 masts on here." First residents knew about it was that little notice stuck on. And I went down to see people and wandered around the estate, found all these little notices. So, and then they're now spreading like wildfire. I have to say, thanks to Dwayne and Nigel May, because I did inquire about this. And I don't know if it's normal practice, but I think it would be very useful. we were sent as ward members the notifications from well, I call them Brisk, you know, so I was doing all them initials, and it shows the locations, etc., where they want to go and all the connections. So if it's not being done as a bog standard thing, I think it should be to ward members, because it, you know, the amount of casework we've had in West Orton, phone calls across the political spectrum, has been phenomenal. And Adele's right, people are extremely angry. You know, they've never had a phone mast on their estate. Like I say, one estate has 12 going up, others have more, in fact. I even found out there's one literally 2 doors away from me, but, you know. And like today on this estate where I am, we have a lot of BT masts, and Brisk were like swarming all over every BT mast, stringing more cables than soft make. All I can say is the birds are going to have a lot more places to perch on, because there's that many more cables actually coming up. So I would like us, if we can, inform ward members of what is happening when companies come in. But I have a question, because obviously Breezehill had Freedom Fibre. Now in West Orton we've got Brisk, we've got more BT open reach masts going up, but we've also got our friends from the other year, IX Wireless. And the question I do have is, how many phone companies, how many of these companies can come along and say, I'm putting a mast up? Because we'll have Brisk. So far, I've only seen IX Wireless along the A6, Manchester Road. But for argument's sake, Brisk have said to residents on Green Meadows, we'll look at going underground, but we may come back. That's a nice bit of thought for them. But if IX Wireless suddenly came along and said, actually, we won't go on Green Meadows, how many how many of these companies can come along and stick a phone mast up? Because reading the report and I've looked at the legislation and stuff like that, you could literally have 6 companies come along and say, I want to put a mast up. I mean, the nearest one I've seen, and I asked enforcement manager about this, was Junction Road West. I was coming back from a meeting in Bolton, and I thought, oh, that's a new mast, light brown colour. Then another one, then another one, then another one, then another one. And it was like a little mini forest of light brown telegraph poles all the way along Junction Road West on the field side. So I'm just wondering how many of these things can be stuck up by how many companies. You know, I'll go back to my original point. I would like the information when it comes in from these companies to be sent to ward members, because at least you'll have an idea where all the flack's going to come from. Because residents, like as Adele quite rightly said, are really angry about it, to say the least. You know, it's a pity we couldn't find the relevant ministers from who made the decision, and they can answer all the casework.
Alex, did you want to come back? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think into the Councillor Wilkinson's probably more, to be fair, more of his second comment or question. I think Brisk are kind of doing, in terms of operators, are doing it correctly, because there is, as with a lot of things, that it's a code of conduct. So it's guidance, not necessarily, it's not set out in legislation in terms of a lot of things they have to do or considerations, which includes siting of new poles. But in terms of Brisk, they are doing it correctly, because in the code of conduct, it says that you should go for site sharing or like share telegraph poles, etc., and ducting, rather than just sticking up your own poles to start with. So they're doing it, to be fair to Brisk, they are doing it the correct way. In terms of other operators, I suppose technically there's no limitation on the number of companies that come along, but there's an obligation that they have to look at site sharing first. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll bring Councillor Warren in before I bring Dwayne in. So, Councillor Warren.
Thank you. It's just a question, really, and it's based off what both Alex and Councillor Wilkinson just said. And we all remember 9X in Bolton. You know, they came in, they dug up all the roads, they went bust not long after. Because competition is so fierce, obviously there's only so many customers to go around. So if we have an area, I mean, I think in Breakmate, I think there's 4 companies that are operating at the minute. if they can't get enough customers and they go bust, what happens with the infrastructure? Because we could end up with a load of poles and wires that are not necessarily looked after anymore. So what would happen with that down the line if something like that happened, please? Thanks.
Very valid question, Councillor Warren. Yeah, so Dwayne?
Thank you. So just coming to Councillor Wilkinson's question first, absolutely no problem sharing the information, but can I request that it comes into the team as a request? We deal with so many different street permits, and if ward councillors want specific information about a provider, absolutely we'll run a report off and we'll send it out. But you've got to focus on the processing all of those permits. It would be quite a big ask. We do the roadworks bulletin. It'd be quite a big ask to pull everything together into different bulletins for different wards all at the same time, because as you've heard, we're dealing with quite a few different companies, quite a different lot of service providers, and you could end up with a real demand on the service to actually just be reporting and not actually be processing the streetworks permit. So that's got to be the priority. But absolutely no problem. If any requests come from councillors to me or to the streetworks team, we'll absolutely pull that together, that report. And then to come to Councillor Warren's question, it's a really good question. And I think I think we all know the answers to the question, don't we? I think there's an expectation at the moment that a lot of these companies are almost startups, and they're looking at like some kind of larger service provider or someone coming in to purchase them. I don't think any of them are in this is a long-term business. So you'd like to think that the infrastructure would be bought up by some of the other providers and to have that competition. But if any of them did go bankrupt or were no longer trading, then the infrastructure would sit there. It wouldn't be. I mean, ultimately, I suppose it could become a highway asset, and the council could be liable. But that hasn't been tested. There's no legal process for that at the moment.
Thank you. Thanks, Dwayne. There are no other items on the agenda. This is the end of the agenda. I note the report and declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.